Okay, so let's kick this one off pretty straightforward. I actually get quite embarrassed still sharing this story, even though it's almost 20 years old at this point now. Actually, it's over 20 years old. So, who is the accidental apprentice? How did I get the name? Why am I doing this podcast? Why am I putting myself out there to do this work? So, let me put it pretty straightforward, and I'll take you back to the beginning. All right, let me introduce myself. Name is Adam Melnick. I am a heat and frost insulator out of Ontario, Canada. I've done a lot of different things, and I'll share that kind of as I walk through the journey. But it goes all the way back to being a lot like maybe a lot of you who are listening, or a lot of you that are connecting with me on social media. And as a high school student, I didn't fit. Nothing fit. And when I say that, I mean I enjoyed school. I enjoyed going to school. I was an only child. I liked hanging out with a lot of other people. School is a great place to do that. I was never really definitive anything. Like I was decent in class, got decent grades, managed to pull off honor roll a few times. But I mean, if honor roll is an 85, I'm pulling off an 86. Yeah, every once in a while I should go high, but honestly, I didn't really have a consistency on that. Um, School was social, was interacting with other people. I didn't mind class, didn't mind interacting with the teachers. I really liked trying to challenge a teacher, but putting the work in, putting the time in, very much procrastinated because the style of work, retrospectively, the style of work drove me insane. So, anyhow, when it came time to figure out what it was you want to do, the sit down with your guidance counselor, start talking about college and university and where you wanted to go, I couldn't see myself anywhere. I mean, other people could tell me that university or college made sense. Maybe, well, university, no one even talked about college. I was in the late 90s, early 2000s. 99 was my graduating year, to be honest with you. And but I took grade 13 OAC and kind of milk that graduating of 2000 class thing, but I can't really call that my year. 99 was my year. So you get into the conversation on what it is you want to do, or where you want to go. And, I did the lawyer conversation because I could talk and I liked debating, and I liked, kind of getting at the heart of an issue and trying to settle issues for individuals and whatever, played around with a bunch of different ideas. None of them really made any sense. I still filled out university application forms. I was accepted to all the universities I applied to. I even had an entrance scholarship to a couple of them, which was kind of shocking. But I knew I wasn't going. I just couldn't figure it out where I was going to go, what I was going to do. In the back of my mind, why this is kind of embarrassing, I legitimately thought that I was going to be a professional wrestler, WWE. Back then it was WWF and WCW. Like, again, I'm old, but those were the ideas I had. And I don't know why, to be honest with you. Like, I wasn't physically fit. I tried to be physically fit, but I certainly wasn't. Kind of like the same way I'm today. I like to work out and try to eat decent, to keep myself relatively healthy, but I wouldn't by any means call myself fit. Fit-ish, I like that word. Anyways, I identified with wrestling because I think it was an outlier. It was a thing that I could say to somebody to get a shock value. It was a thing that I liked the idea of jumping on a microphone. I really like talking in front of a microphone, like talking in front of audiences and engaging with individuals. And that actually makes a lot more sense later on in life, closer to where we are now in this story, where we are today with Accidental Apprentice podcast and social media and everything else that I'm doing, and have been doing off and on for some time now. But, the wrestling thing, I don't know, shock value, just whatever. So there was a pinnacle point where I sat down with my guidance counselor, and I have all the time in the world for guidance counselors today, pretty much because of this moment. I sat down with her, and I think she expected it to be pretty simple. Happened to be on student council. I was like co-captain of the rugby team. Probably not, probably just because I talked a lot. It wasn't definitely because of performance. And so, anyways, and I had decent grades. And our school was very university driven at the time. And so, anyways, you sit down and the conversation becomes pretty quickly like, where did we go to university? I kind of chuckled and I pulled out the Shawn Michaels Wrestling Academy in San Antonio, Texas. Now, that doesn't exist anymore, obviously. Anyone that follows wrestling, the world's changed. But at the time, he opened a wrestling school. And I said, hey, this is where I want to go. Like, legitimately, I think this is what I want to do. The look on her face, I can only imagine, like, being so much older now and thinking about the work that guidance counselors do with people and I don't know. I mean, I guess everyone deserves to have their opportunity and engagement, but I think I could see why she kind of figured things would have been an easy conversation for me, not expecting that. And then, of course, was I just being a smart ass, or was I actually like, what was I doing? Right. I fundamentally, I was kind of wasting her time because this was in, I think, April or May of my graduating year. So it's not like this is a conversation she was having early enough to say, let's course correct you. It was, oh my God, what are you doing with me? You're like, you're wasting my time. And I was really like, was coming unraveled in grades of 12 and 13 for me because I knew it didn't fit. I had no idea what I was doing. I was enjoying myself and I really just didn't care. And I didn't care because I knew I couldn't find a fit. So I just proceeded to enjoy myself and I enjoyed building relationships. I became, I had more friends than I probably had ever through high school. I tried different things. I just was different. I took on different sports. I did co-op in a phys ed class, which, I didn't even want to take phys ed. And so I did co-op in phys ed class and I had a good friend actually convince the gym teacher to take me as a co-op student because he did not want to take me because I wasn't really a phys ed student. So, just did things differently. And at that time I knew things just weren't fitting. But I took it upon myself to enjoy myself and enjoy my time in high school. And I did. I still got good grades when I graduated, et cetera. And then it was like, what do you do then? And so as all my friends left for university, some went to college, I was bartending and was serving tables and just trying to, I figured I'd take a year, right? And that became a very depressing time because it was a time where everyone was looking like they were living their lives and I felt like I was behind. And so that feeling of being behind really can play on you, right? Like you just didn't think that your life was going to amount to anything. Like it gets pretty compounding. And so thank God social media didn't exist for me back then. It might have been even worse, but um, even then, just society, the pressures of society got to me, right? So I made it to about December. And then I realized I needed to do something. I had to do something. I had no plan. I'm going to figure this out. I still didn't try the wrestling thing because, I mean, legitimately, I don't think that was ever serious. But at that point, I said to myself, okay, I'm going to go to college. So I went to the closest college within commuting distance, Fleming College in Peterborough. I walked in to apply because I had no idea how to apply when you're not in school anymore. So I just walked in the front doors and found my way to admissions and said, I want to be a student. And essentially there was like 2 courses available for January intakes. I could have been an early childhood educator or I would take rec and leisure. So I took rec and leisure. So I thought, hey, maybe that's like physically active, physically fit. Maybe I can still tie this to the wrestling thing. Maybe I still want to do that. Like, I don't know, whatever. And I took that and I went to college for, it was a year and a half because like fast tracked. So I started in January. It let me go all the way to the following January and then a quick semester to April and I graduated. So actually that was a really cool way of doing school. I think being intense with school like that for me was helpful. Now, along the way, I've always worked part-time jobs. The joke about me in high school was that my resume was like an encyclopedia. I always had a part-time job. I would have multiple part-time jobs. I would leave one, jump to another one. Like I knew none of them were for jobs forever, but I was always willing to try stuff. I loved doing different jobs. I loved learning about how different places worked. I loved learning about the jobs inside of the places, even though it was always a search to figure out what it is I wanted to do. I knew that, and I just didn't know where to look. And so I just kept digging through these things over and over through part-time jobs. I worked factory work, like delivering Kentucky Fried Chicken when they first started doing delivery. Really horrible job, but I got to do that, but without doing the tougher work that my friends were doing in the KFC, which was like cleaning and cooking and all the stuff they did and dealing with the customers. I just delivered the odd chicken package. It was ridiculous. It made no money. Pizza made all the money. I barely covered my gas. Anyways, so anyways, well, I bounced through all these different jobs, get to college, kept jobs going, and always doing something part-time, like I said. Graduate college, get my diploma, whatever it was, in rec and leisure. I look back on that time and I joked at the time because it was basically part-time employment opportunities was all it was got you. But there's a lot of courses in there that actually became really valuable in life later that I never recognized. And there was a trigger later in life where I realized that you can go to post-secondary, take courses, not necessarily the entire diploma, degree, bachelor's of arts, master's, whatever. You can get courses that actually help you in your world of work. And it's funny because when you get into work, you can say to yourself, hey, this particular course, like say HR management, human resources management, taking a couple of courses related to that would be really helpful because I'm in charge of people now, or I have to do accounting, or I'm helping project plan large budgets. And you know what? I don't really know a lot about that, but I'm in this spot now. And so a quick course like that, and I know there's stuff on YouTube and LinkedIn and the world's advanced and you can get a lot of really great things like that. But sometimes there's a place for the fundamentals of post-secondary. And I'll always say that I'm not anti-college or anti-university. I just think there's a place, and it shouldn't be the first place when you don't know what you're doing or where you're going. That is definitely not the place to start. I think you need to have a plan to go to university or college. You need to think about what you're going there for. It's a lot of money to go try things. There's lots of ways to try things, lots of ways to explore things that aren't thousands and thousands of dollars. And then you still even more lost, and you have the weight of that money. Come on, let's think about this for a second, right? It isn't really rocket science. And I don't think the system's pushing people like they used to. I think there's an openness to have better conversations around what it is you want to do and how you want to get there. So that's enlightening. And I appreciate that, because I'm in the space and have been in the space probably for over a decade now of helping individuals like have this conversation in a lot of different ways. So anyways, graduate college, I am now in the job market, and I worked a lot of different things again. And I did some really different stuff. Like I worked as a weight loss consultant for individuals, one-on-one coaching for food plans. And that was horrible. And it lasted that job like 30 days, 60 days, something like that. I sold funeral goods. I did pre-sales. So I couldn't no tragedy in your life. I had to knock on the door and tell you like how smart it was to invest 20 years ahead, 30, 50 years ahead, why it's important to buy that plot of land now. Cause retail, the real estate's only going to go up. Right. So, it was the worst. It was such a slime ball thing. And I should have known that there was that wasn't really going to go that well, because the very first day I was getting trained in that job, the person who was training me, I had to give them some money to put gas in their vehicle for us to get to the first client, to then, to teach me the pitch. And I'm like, I should have bigger warning flags. It couldn't have been bigger warning flags if they tried. Right. And that's okay. Whatever, learning experience. Right. And that's the cool thing. Like, did all these different jobs over the years, and they were definitely learning experiences. So, then I got a spot where I was working in a gym. Health and fitness did become part of life. It's just, never became the full part of life. Now, I did try wrestling. I will tell you this. I did go out to Cambridge, Ontario. There was a gentleman there, Showtime Eric Young. He made it. Like, the guy was amazing, amazing. And so I got to spend a little bit of time with this guy. I think 2 or 3 sessions was about all I made. I got my ass kicked, big time. And I realized, it hurt a lot. Like, it really does. And I know today, like the behind the curtain of wrestling is very open, but back in the late 90s, early 2000s, it was not open. And so, you will learn the hard way. And I learned the hard way. And then, fundamentally, I learned that I'm not going to be a wrestler. Kind of knew it, but I did go out there and exclamation point that statement to say, I'm going to try it. Did not work. Okay. So that's gone. It's completely gone. Now what? Right. And so, I was dating my wife at the time. And so we were boyfriend, girlfriend then. And then, we've been married coming on 20 years now. And so anyways, we got through this conversation about what are you going to do? And I'm like, I have no idea what I'm going to do. I didn't have an idea and no plan. I was just trying to survive. So at this point I was work at the Boys and Girls Club. I think I was bouncing between my dad's place, my mom's place, and my car. I don't even my parents realized I was doing that. And so it was just a nightmare of trying to figure out life. And so, I went from honor roll, student council, all these things, path, entrance scholarship, university, and bouncing between, some really shitty spots in life, be honest with you, with really no future, very little money, if any money at all, enough to put gas and maybe some food every once in a while. And, I was really bad with money. I built no habits, no skills. So I was in probably the lowest point when I look back now. And I no hope on where we're going to go. And my wife went to a baby shower. And so she was at this baby shower, and I don't know what possessed her to do this, but she told everybody that I want to be a professional wrestler. When people were asking her what I was doing, she kind of just said this thing, and it unraveled. So everyone in the space, although the women that were there, the people that were there, they kind of just an intervention sort of. And all of a sudden there's a phone call coming to me the next day from a business manager of the union that I'm a member of now, telling me I can start as a heat and frost insulator. You're going to get a call and you're going to get it sent to work. And I'm like, well, when's the call? What's the work? What am I doing? I know nothing about this. And he goes, I'll call you. Don't worry about it. That was it. I'm working on a boys and girls club, which actually was kind of a cool job, by the way. I was a supervisor. So I was like, got to move around and help everybody, make sure kids were getting a good quality of time and being taken care of and being like big brothers and sisters. And so I really appreciated that work. And I like doing that, especially being an only child. So I was there, and then all of a sudden this phone call comes through on like a Tuesday. And I really didn't want to go do this. Like, I did not want to get into a trade, did not want to have an apprenticeship. Everything I had learned up to that point said this was failing. This was like, you're talking about a guy that occasionally was living in his car, like sleeping in his car, occasionally like, trying to crash at the gym, like, whatever. Like, I was really in a tough spot, and I looked at apprenticeship as a failure. I looked at it as, oh my God, like, no one could find out I'm doing this. I was okay with everybody knowing about everything else, but oh my God, if they knew about apprenticeship. So I made a deal with my wife, and I said to her, like, look, if I do this, as soon as I can find a way to make more money, I'm going to leave the trade. Okay. Shocker. 22 years later, still there, still involved in the trade, career's completely gone a good direction I never even knew existed, and did all these crazy things. And so, and still doing really awesome stuff today with awesome people and getting lots of opportunities to do things. And I'm very fortunate to do all that. And I'll never forget that, because the trade saved my life, really, probably in a lot of ways. Like, I wasn't in a dark spot, but I was on a really bad path that was going to take me probably in a really dark way. I was very fortunate. Like, I wasn't, I'll drink a beer, I'll have a drink here and there, but I'm not a heavy drinker. I'm not a drug user. I don't any of that stuff. So I'm not that is the key to everything, but I was fortunate that I didn't have those habits as well, because who knows what that would have looked like if it would have compounded those challenges, as well as being in the spot I was in, feeling like you're kind of hopeless. Like, I mean, that's terrifying to think about that. I work with individuals today that are in those places, and I can see that. And I know I've been close to it, but not really in it. But I knew I was on a bad spot. So anyways, start the apprenticeship. I mean, when people talk about being green and starting a trade, I don't know if anyone can top me. And I mean, I'll hold this as a claim to fame, and it's kind of embarrassing too. I'm sharing this embarrassing story, really. But I've shared it for years, and every time it still makes me, like, I don't know, just go red in the face a little bit. Thank God for lights, right? So I walk on the job site, and the only advice I was given was, have work boots. You need to have a steak knife, tape measure, hard hat. And that was really about it for safety gear in 2003. That was a lot at the time. So anyways, I walked on the job site with a tape measure, a yellow hard hat that I picked up cheap from, I don't know if it was Home Depot or Canadian Tire or something, and some boots that were really not the right type of boots. They were cheap, the cheapest thing I could afford, and a steak knife and tape measure. And I'll tell you, I did not know how to read the tape measure. I knew how to read the inch increments and roughly what half and quarter and 3/4 was. But I mean, I couldn't go to the fractions and decimals. Like, I was well behind that conversation. So I walk on the job site. I had no idea really where to go. I mean, the foreman had called and told me, like, I'm so-and-so, come find me here, blah, blah, blah. And I walked right up to the lunch truck with a knife in my hand. And I'm pretty sure that lunch truck thought I was going to try to rob him, because I looked like a guy wandering off the streets pretending to be a construction worker. Luckily, I started in a really great area of Ontario. I started in Kingston, Ontario, and that area probably was like the perfect place for me to start. I mean, maybe others would have been great as well, but I'll always be so fond of getting the chance to start there, because they took somebody that probably in many circumstances would have been like flushed out of this trade, and they gave me time. They gave me coaching guidance. They essentially whipped me into a tradesperson. And it took a lot, I'm sure. I mean, there was a lot of stories I'll get into other days. I would love to dig into my original foreman or my counterpart. There was another apprentice that the company really wanted to start. And so the union made them take me, and they started him. And he's a great guy and fantastic. I got to go to trade school with him and everything too, became friends. He probably was really, really key to me, like, figuring this thing out as a trade. I'm always grateful for that and those guys. And so anyways, they took me under the wing, and for about a year and a half, I shuffled around lots of places in Kingston. I was driving tons and tons of kilometers. I salted out, like, I got so much salt exposure on the bottom of my car. The salt ate through my oil pan driving back and forth to Kingston from where I lived at the time. But I just loved working with those guys, and it really wasn't cost effective, but it was just the best experience for me as a tradesperson. And I was gaining stuff every day. And I'll harp on social media all the time about showing up, communicating, asking questions, because honestly, that's how I got through it. And I was taught to do that by these guys. And there was a whole collection of characters that walked me through my journey in the beginning. And it was their time that they gave me that allowed me to figure this trade out. So much so that when I got to trade school, then everything started to come together. So I got to my first year of trade school and I realized that having been to college, and although it wasn't like, I wouldn't call it a prestigious course, it was just a course I appreciated. I did enjoy it, did have a good professors and teachers and stuff. But when I got to trade school, I got to see practical education. Like it was post-secondary education that was practical to the work I was doing and how it had advanced my trade. So did stuff for a year and a half, got to trade school, learned the competencies and the fundamentals and all the pieces that went around what we were doing. And then it advanced my skills. And then when I went back to work, I got to be better at my trade. It was like the first real level up for me. I mean, I didn't, and I think I realized I leveled up in the field, but I really got to level up there, go back with some like tools in my mental toolbox that I was able to contribute back on a job site, which was super helpful. Because I kind of started to feel more part of it. I started to feel connected to the trade. And so, and I'm always grateful for being a member of a union. I'll be honest with you. The union probably gave the room and had the system in place for education and training, both on the job site and in the classroom, that allowed this. If I didn't have that, if those structures weren't in place, I wasn't coming out the other side of this for sure. No way. So I progressed through my apprenticeship, and I got to do some really cool things along the way through my apprenticeship and that, and worked in a lot of different places with a lot of different people, and I really loved it. Like I loved trade school. It was odd. Like I liked school, loved trade school, loved it. It fit. I got it. Like it was, you learn something, you do something. I'm like, why did I not do shop all the way through? So again, another big trigger in my life I realized was that, there's a way people learn. We all know there's a way people learn, but there's ways that people can succeed in learning that maybe fundamentally they can't. But you still got to work your ass off. Like trade school, being in the trades, I hate when people say like, I'm good with my hands. Okay, so you better be good with your head, because there's tons of math, there's tons of science. I don't care what the trade is. Like you got to be able to do that. Now, granted, the math and science level might be different. It might not be that university level grade 12 stuff that you see today, but I'll be honest, it isn't far off. And I know this because when I finished my apprenticeship, I got to have a couple of different roles as a journey person. And then I got asked to come teach in the trade school. And I got to combine what I had learned through my apprenticeship, what I had done on the job. And I had to start teaching actually some individuals that were journeymen that were getting removed from site because of their skill sets. And someone had to give them a refresher to allow them to get back to work. And that was like my trial by fire. Got thrown right into it. There was really no curriculum. I had to base it off the school stuff. I had to whip stuff out of like thin air and pull something together for these guys. And these were cast of characters. I mean, deep down, good humans, but my God, like tough tradesmen. Okay. Tough. I wish them all well and I hope they're doing well, but my Lord, that was a hill and to climb. And I'm glad I did it. It was a wonderful experience to get to do, because it really pushed me. Like, do I really want to be a teacher? This is probably the hardest people you're going to ever have to teach in your life. Do you really want to do this? And how much do you really love this trade? All those check boxes got checked and it fit. And then I got to work in the trade school full time. And I worked under a senior instructor that was very hard to work under, very hard to work under. God rest his soul. I found out he did pass. He disappeared into the sunset when he left. But he was very, very hard. An old Irishman who definitely had his way of doing things, and definitely whatever I did wasn't going to be the right way. And I had a very long apprenticeship under him too. But when times transitioned and he went into retirement and I took the school over, I had a lot of ideas combined old and new, and how to bring something different, because I didn't have friends or like people didn't get me in the trade. The trade helped me. The trade grew me. The trade helped me become the person I was, the professional I was becoming, and all those pieces. So I always feel this like relationship to give back to the trade and the industry, but it starts to get bigger than that as I started progressing and realizing that this story, my story, all the trades have very similar challenges to them. And there's lots of limitations for people understanding how to actually get to the trade, how to be successful in a trade, how to prepare themselves for those entries. I think about all the hard lessons I learned along the way, and I'm very fortunate, good people that could give that time. That isn't always able to be replicated, but there's other ways we can help that. And so that's kind of how we get to this. So as I became the director of apprenticeship and did that stuff, I got to do lots of other things. After that, I worked my way through the union, got elected as an agent. I served as government relations. I now work for our international office. So I work for, representing all of North America. But mostly I say all North America. It's where the office is. I'm the director of Canadian affairs. So I do government relations, public relations, stakeholder stuff for the insulators in Canada. Work with the locals and the schools and the training centers. So I try to work with a lot of the same people I did before, but I get to do it from a different spot now and try to help support them in all their endeavors and the work that they're going to do. So I'm really humbled to have this job. It's an amazing opportunity to do something different. I'm the first one to have it too. So I'm really, really, really flattered to get that chance. And so, but along the way, I've always had the opportunity, because I would speak out about these conversations about my journey. And I was engaging students, I get asked to go talk to the high schools and stuff like that, and elementary schools. And that was fun. But I'll be honest with you, I got connected into a situation where there was a guidance counselor workshop in Toronto District School Board, one of the biggest school board in all of Ontario, which I think makes it the biggest in Canada, if I'm understanding correctly. And they had a guidance counselor workshop. It was all the guidance counselors in a workshop talking about skill trades. There's a dean from one of the colleges who was supposed to be the keynote speaker. And for some particular reason, she couldn't make it. And I don't know what possessed, like, the network of people I had been interacting with for a couple of years at that point in time. Someone picked the phone up and said, "Hey, can you go do a keynote at this guidance counselor workshop?" And at that point, I was just the instructor at the apprenticeship school. And I said, "Yeah, of course." No idea what I was going to talk about. So I got there and actually just told them basically the story, maybe in a shorter version, but I came and gave my story. And then everything went sideways in the sense that the structure for that workshop and what the guidance counselors were doing just kind of went off the rails. And it was just this Q&A session essentially with me and them, which was really cool. Like, I got to dig into this thing and I really started to understand the work that they do, the challenges that they have, and I'm sharing a perspective, and I'm realizing that there's this gap that comes from industry, that comes from the different sectors of employment, the different skills that are necessary. Like, industry and the world of work advances at a rapid pace. And then we have this weird expectation that guidance and teachers and educators are going to keep up with that while they're still doing their own job, right? And doing the things that they have to do in the school. And for a lot of people, like borderline raising their kids, like, schools fill a lot of gaps to help support people. We saw it during the pandemic, like the impact of the kids not going to school. Anyways, with all that being said, that gap, it's like I started calling upon myself at that point in time that, hey, I'm going to be one of the many people that are out there, because there was many, and there still are. I help fill that gap of knowledge and education and insights, and take that information from industry and help, educators be more armed, and help this, which fundamentally will help students and everyone else with planning. And I really just held on to that. And I kept always, even though I'm always busy with the work that I do for my trade and for my union, when I can find time, I will find time wherever I can, which makes for I work a lot of hours every week for doing a lot of different things. But I service everything I can to the best of my ability. And I try to do everyone justice for them providing time and space. Right. And so anyways, with that being said, I put a lot of time in over the years engaging with professionals, and continue to engage with professionals on around developing their knowledge and understanding of what it takes to be an apprentice, how to navigate a trade, how things work. And then I got to have the opportunity to serve the government of Ontario. I've done stuff serving the federal government, advising around apprenticeship, around, pathways and reducing barriers. And I've forged some really interesting relationships along the way to provide insight into things like policy and standards and regs and all kinds of interesting things. And sometimes that's directly from work. And then sometimes I get phone calls after hours with, "Hey, like, let's take your insulator hat off for a second. I want you to give me some insight. It's 9:30 on a Friday night. Can you give me some insight on some apprenticeship pieces that we're trying to figure out over here?" And I get to kind of help everybody. It works out a lot of ways. And so I'm fortunate to have that space and time and experience. And I think it's because I didn't even know what the hell the trade was. The trade I got into, I didn't know what it was. I barely knew what an apprenticeship was. And I had journeymen craft my career, craft my insights. And, I had to approach that a particular way. And that's why I preach what I preach about apprentices getting into things they are, because I couldn't have been further from being a skilled tradesperson than most. And I got to do some amazing stuff because the people that taught me along the way, but I had to hold my end of the deal up too, right? I had to be there. I had to attend. I had to learn. I had to try. I had to ask questions. I had to push myself. I had to go home and read the textbooks and actually understand what the hell is going on in the trade, because I wasn't a second or third generation who had somebody in the trade who talked about the trade. I didn't know that. People talk about materials I'd never seen before in my life, and I had to figure out how the hell they worked and what they did. And anyways, it wasn't, I'm not saying what was me. I'm just saying it can be hard for everybody in a trade, and there's ways to succeed. And, it's not like I figured all of that out on my own. I figured some things out on my own, sure, but I asked. It's remarkable what journey persons will tell you. When you don't know something, they will tell you if they know it. And if they don't know it, they'll help you figure out how to find out. There's something intuitively that happens within a trade that people want to share knowledge and skills and transfers and make sure people are getting better. And if you want to get better and you're putting your time in and showing up and trying to be the best you can be as an apprentice, people will take that and help invest in you. And that's what I was very fortunate along the way. I had lots of journeymen invest time and knowledge and transfer their skills to me to give me that opportunity. And that is exactly what's supposed to happen from a journey person to an apprentice. And I know that I'm lucky those journeymen, probably it wasn't just me that learned like that from them. I've heard from lots of apprentices over the years who got to work with those journeymen after the fact that I did, and they had very similar experiences. So I did luck out getting a lot of like really good mentors along the way. But I also feel really responsible to give back. And I think that today in 2024, you can do a lot more than just to the individuals around you. I think you can open the door up and be very transparent and trying to help a lot more people in a lot of ways. I think that regardless of the trade, that there's a lot of similarities of my experiences that really help shape me that I don't mind, somewhat embarrassed, but I like sharing. And then I like digging deeper. So one of the things I loved about working all the different jobs I did growing up was a realization that as you hunted for things, one of the best experiences was doing, right? And hence why the trade thing worked for me the best, apprenticeship. And I realized that's really how I really like to learn. Over the years, I went back to college and university. I've taken courses that fit the work that I was doing. So, you cherry pick the courses that made sense and that made my skills better at the job I was actually doing. It was a really great concept and it made me better at what I did. And specifically, still don't hold a diploma or degree. I think I hold a couple of certificates, but I don't hold anything beyond the rec and leisure. I just got pieces of stuff that if I were to piecemeal it all together, it looks kind of cool, but it doesn't match, right? It doesn't form one thing. And that's okay. I'm actually not against that at all. I kind of like that. My certificate of qualifications, like my highest standard right now. And I think it's a priceless standard, by the way. I really do. I think it's, one of the things I'd love to see is that certificate of qualification being given the equivalent status of being a diploma in this country, in these provinces. And I think it's on the edge of happening, and I hope it does. And I know I was a youth advisor for the Ministry of Labor here in Ontario. It was one of the main recommendations I was trying to get across the table is that needs to be a thing. Who knows? Maybe someday. Anyways, when I was thinking about all the different jobs I did when I was younger and bouncing around trying things out, what I realized was that how cool of an experience it was to hear about and learn about other people's jobs. And it really helped me along the way know the things I didn't want to do. Sure, it took me a long time to figure out what I wanted to do. And I'm still figuring that out now. But it definitely helped me steer away from things. And so that is kind of where the podcast was born. So 2018, 17, I think it was, I started interviewing individuals around their jobs in the skilled trades, their journeys, how they got there, their stories, because it was an opportunity to share with others. Here's someone's story. Like, you want to know what an auto body technician is and what they do and how you get there and stories about the unique characters in there. Like, let's talk to these people. And so you don't have to go work part-time in that garage unless you really need to, but you could use this story to help you figure some stuff out. And I did that for 26 episodes. I got through a lot of cool stories. They're still on Spotify. I don't have the technical knowledge of how to put them on YouTube. I'm sure someone will figure that out or whatever, but it's 26 episodes of free content out there. All the stuff's free anyways, but it's there. And there's some interesting stories. Don't mind my really horrible editing and podcast techniques. And remember, it was 2017, 18, and 19. So give me some space, okay? Anyways, I did that for a while where I could. It was hard because you're burning the candle at both ends while you're doing your job and trying to find time to do this stuff. Now, technology, here I am 9:00 on a Saturday night, and this is fantastic. All this wonderful equipment, some simple stuff off Amazon, and all of a sudden I've got a wicked setup, and this is pretty cool. And it doesn't take as much as it used to. And now I can do things via Skype or what do I got? Zencaster now. I did a couple episodes on the podcast with StreamYard, but they don't do high quality, so I had to figure that out the hard way. So there's a couple rough things probably on the YouTube channel that may or may not come off. But this should be high quality from what they tell me. Anyways, hopefully it looks better. This one we'll see in a minute. But yeah, so there's an opportunity to probably not burn as many hours outside of, the world of sleeping and family and life in general. But realistically, my wife knows that this is a big piece of life for me, and I have this burning desire to try to give back and help others. And so I'll be taking the podcast down a really interesting path this time. I think that I have the opportunity now with a pretty vast stakeholder network, a lot of people I know across North America and beyond related to the skill trades, and they have some really interesting stories, the journeys they've had and the careers they have. And the world of the skill trades is a lot more than just apprenticing inside of a construction trade. There's a hell of a lot more to it than that. And I'm going to take through this podcast, go on a lot of journeys with individuals that do jobs directly as a skilled trades person, as an apprentice, as a journey person, sure. But I'm also going to have conversations with people that are in the trade school system that are teaching, people that are working in nonprofits and NGOs that are helping people figure out how to get to the skilled trades, that are trying to change the culture around the skilled trades, people that run organizations or projects, or they support things related to like mental health. We've got guests coming from all different angles that have really wild stories and backgrounds of their own that can help you understand that the world's more connected than you realize. There isn't these linear paths that you just head down and you never come off them. And it's perfectly fine. It's perfectly fine to not know 100% what it is you want to do and to not have it all figured out, and that it's going to change along the way. And there's some inherent skills and abilities you can start building for yourself through all your experiences that'll help you always land on your feet. It's certainly not going to be perfect. It's not going to be mess free, but that's okay. And I really want to hope that the guests along the way are going to help you understand that, take some of that shine off the dream you think it's going to be, and think about getting into the work a little bit around it. And it's okay. That's a good thing, not a bad thing. That work, those experiences, those failures are probably fundamentally what's going to make you better at whatever it is you do when you do it. And I remember one thing being told when I was younger, that you'll change your job a bunch of times. It was a generational change that was coming, and that people will be changing their jobs and changing their courses and trajectories many, many times over. And I've seen a lot of that myself, obviously, but I've also seen a lot of people still doing the same thing for 20 plus years. So it's really interesting that, I actually want to talk to some of those people too, because I want to understand how the hell are you doing the same thing for 20 plus years, like the exact same thing. Like I'm sure I've been a heat frost insulator, but I've done lots of different things inside my trade that have allowed it to change a lot. And so that's kind of fundamentally a very similar trajectory I've had along the way. Whereas I know individuals that have done very similar jobs, and I think they've done the same job for like the same amount of time, like 20 years. So I'm really curious to dig into them a little bit. I'm fortunate to have a really cool friend group out of high school that went and did some wild, crazy stuff, like some cool stuff. I'm hoping to get a few of them on. Two of them have done podcasts in the past, but I'm hoping to loop them back on, because I know their careers continue to grow and change and advance, and they got some cool stories. And one of them is kind of a celebrity. So, anyways, we'll go through a bunch of those stories as well. And at the end of the day, I'm here to help everybody the best I can on this conversation around, whatever your career path is. And if it ends up being apprenticeship and skilled trades, obviously we're going to stay really focused on that conversation. And if anything, it can either help you realize that a career in or related to apprenticeship and skilled trades might be your thing, or it helps you realize 100% it's not. And that's okay too. Like I said, I did a lot of different things to figure out the things I didn't want to do. And that takes up a lot of time. Sometimes it's nice if people, you have all these resources at your fingertips today that didn't exist before. So let's use them for some good stuff. And I mean, might not be the most flashy and, vibrant. I'm going to try to get better at all that in social media and everything along the way. But at the end of the day, the core message is in here. That's here to assist you. Right. And so your comments, your feedback, your emails, obviously, all the social stuff I'd love to see, like liking and sharing, help me get the stuff out there. But if you have comments, you have questions, whatever the case may be, don't hesitate to fire it out. The Accidental Apprentice email will be floating up there somewhere. There is a website that I have to dress that up a little bit nicer, but predominantly it's going to be YouTube. TikTok seems to be very fast acting. YouTube Shorts, Instagram, that kind of stuff. So, the tools will be out there to connect with me. Direct message me. I'll answer any direct message to the best of my ability. And if I can't help you, if I can't find the source knowledge or whatever, I'll connect you to people that do. Like that's how the world works. It's not that scary anymore. And it's not that shocking to cold call or check with people and give you a hand to figure this stuff out along the way. So anyways, we're on this journey together. That's how I became the Accidental Apprentice. Fun story. I was actually given the name by a group of kids in elementary school. I told my story to them. They joked and they said, "You accidentally became an apprentice," and boom, there it was, Accidental Apprentice. That was the name. So, just a little tidbit of how that name actually came to be, how it got picked anyway. So, and it just stuck. I can't seem to lose it along the way. And, there was a lot of people that were pushing me to get back in the space about 2-3 months ago, and didn't take that much to nudge me back. I just had to find the time, the equipment, and figure it out how I was going to manage it all. But luckily there's things called evenings and weekends, and everyone's able to do things electronically and virtually. So that actually opened the door for this thing back up. And so I'm really excited to do that and get some stories and some messages and, learnings out to you all. Anyways, I rambled way too much in this story. It is an interesting one to share. So it does make me go a little off script, a little less professional, a little less organized, but authentically it's how I got here. And I'm very proud of the chance that I have to do this and the stuff along the way. And, I know I didn't get anywhere in any of this on my own. There was a lot of support along the way. And I think that we all could use that in anything that we do. Trying to do any of this stuff alone is pretty much just crazy when there's so much availability to be supported in a lot of different ways. And so, anyways, I'm here to share these stories and help all of you where I can, and hopefully gain something from it. At the very least, maybe I either entertained you while you were doing something, or maybe I put you to sleep and that's what you needed. I don't know, but hopefully I helped. Anyways, thanks for listening. Thanks for sticking to the end if you did. Absolutely all the best. And yeah, there's plenty more to come.